Hello, John.
Hello, Alor.
Well, once again, we have some good news. And so Ireland's manufacturing output now is worth 124 billion a year. It's now half as big as the UK's 253 billion, despite the UK having more than 13 times our population. So that's pretty impressive.
It's very impressive, and of course, from the point of view of the fact that how we've come this far to have such a great manufacturing base and such powerful exports, 124 billion. It doesn't grow on trees. That's number one. But Britain has had centuries of their industrial revolution and all that they sort of were developing over the years, long before this country had anything. So we've come from virtually nowhere to a great position when one thinks of it. And it's a great credit to the workers, the Irish workers as well, because they're contributing to this. I know that there's some ones from other countries, but I think the Irish are very versatile and great workers, because they did a great lot of work in Britain. It was them built the roads and the railways, funny enough, or built some of them. And also they were great workers in the United States. They helped to develop that country and planted the seed of the Catholic faith in that country also. So we're talking about work, and this country, it's a great credit to the people and perhaps the government that managed to attract such people and give the education to people to be able to sort of rise to the challenge.
That's it. But the thing is, like, if we're doing so well, right?
Yes.
Why are people still, even on middle incomes, in poverty?
Well, you see, this is what they're saying, and I think there's a very good reason for it. I think the income tax is probably creeping up a bit on the high side.
Oh, geez, yeah. Like, if you earn 100,000 in Ireland, you'll come out with 60. That's 40,000 of your money gone.
That's unfortunately, I think, OTT over the top. And quite frankly, governments shouldn't be so avaricious, because it's a disincentive to people. Because I know when I was working, and tax was absolutely astronomical, and in a normal, reasonable type salary, half of it was going on tax. As a matter of fact, up to 60%. It was absolutely horrendous, and yet you had to try and buy accommodation, buy a house or something, so as you could have some kind of independence from the rental market, because that was creeping up nearly astronomical for what happens. Now, one of the problems with the fact that the people are in this trouble, the price of houses in this country is down to the property situation and this economy, where houses that are quite ordinary houses, 3-bedroom semi-detached, where sometimes you wouldn't swing a cat, going at high prices that doesn't represent anything like the value that the high prices should represent. Except in Britain and other countries, developers are obliged, they're welcome enough, but if they're buying property and houses, they're obliged to give a 35-year lease to a prospective tenant with a reasonable rent and 5-year rent reviews that are based on the economy, not on any inflated figures. So therefore, houses are a lot cheaper to buy and rent on the continent, believe it or not, except in Britain, of course. So we should not be copying that, and houses should be far more affordable than they are. But it's the fact that the governments, past governments, and probably the present, are not addressing this problem. And we hear nothing about homelessness and all the rest of it. And I understand just recently that some Irish people that were renting properties was put out, and people from outside the country were given the accommodation. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know, but the fact that people are earning good salaries, that would be the envy of me when I was working. And I'm not earning anything like that by way of a private pension and a state pension, but enough certainly to live on, no question or doubt about it.
You're a multi-millionaire, John Malone. We know it.
Well, as I say, you're a multimillionaire when you have enough to live on, and a few quid for the rainy day if there's expenditure required, because like this is. But you're wealthy, funny enough, when you have a spiritual awareness and when you have the joy of that. That is what gives you the real joy. That makes you wealthy. Funny enough,
yes.
when you're concentrating on the important thing of developing your spiritual life. Wealth will never provide it. You can live in a house with an avenue and maybe a person opening the gate or an automatic gate and have more room than you need in case you have visitors. That doesn't bring happiness. It might bring a bit of prestige in this day and age, but your permanent home is in heaven. That's just what the Christian
well, speaking of wealth, I was in Killiney yesterday, okay? And I drove around Killiney, past Bono's house, past Enya's castle, past all the beautiful homes. They're all worth anything from 5 million to 20 million. Okay?
Correct.
And what you'll see is, you see nobody in the homes, you see nobody playing in the gardens, no families. You can see the back gardens, you can see the front gardens as you go up and down the hills, it's all over the place.
All manicured.
All manicured, everything looks perfect, but there's no life.
Correct. And that's exactly the way. You can have a house that's worth that kind of money, which is probably obscene in some ways. No house is worth that, no matter what they're gawking at by way of water or whatever it is. A lot of them are maybe looking at another house. Now, this is where this country is over. Houses are overpriced. We're in the EU. They implement all the rules that the EU imposes. We were talking about what's this? What we're talking about, and just there was that houses are.
Well, what we're talking about basically is manufacturing in Ireland, okay, and then the cost, the cost of living, really.
Yeah, well, you see, it's the cost of houses that's costing that, and people are paying high prices for houses. It's never worth it in the fit, and like I've seen them. The houses that are going for this sort of ridiculous money. And then you can't really move in Dublin with the traffic. And where do you go in Dublin, aside from work? Where do you go by way of entertainment? Now, you can go to the beach, but how will you get to the beach? Because they're interfering now with the traffic. And so I think you have to go around the world for sport to try and get wherever you're going. You certainly can't go through Dublin because there's so many one-way streets and that you can't use. So who wants to pay this absorbent money to live in Dublin when virtually, where do you go? Do you go into O'Connell Street? It's nearly considered a dangerous place now because of the way that they've interfered with that marvellous wide street that it as was. Now, which I don't know what to make of it.
I can tell you that you will not navigate Dublin City now without Google Maps, because the city is such a mess with all their road markings, all their road signs, all their one-way systems here, one-way there. And you got trams, you got bus lanes, you got bike lanes, you got pedestrian lanes. It's a complete minefield.
Correct. And by the way, they're doing that now in places where people could go two ways. They're making it one way, so people will be put to the pin of their collar and will be suffering from stress because they can't go the way they were going because of making cycle lanes and this, that and the other. They're trying to do away with cars as far as I can see. So perhaps people will have to go back to the bicycle as what was very popular years ago.
I have to say one street, and I was there a couple of weeks ago and I was very, very impressed, okay? And it looks like something out foreign now. It looked amazing, right, okay? Capel Street was always a street. There was loads. There was always, as far as I remember as a child, it was always chock-a-block full of cars going over the bridge, you know. But what they've done now is they've pedestrianised it a couple of weeks ago.
Good.
Okay. Now the whole street is covered in tables and chairs, restaurants. You think it looks really, really international. Really, really looks well.
So there's benefits.
There's great benefits. Now there's a whole pile of restaurants there. There's pubs. Slattery's
And
is doing
people
very
can
well.
go about in peace
Yes, people can go about in peace.
without jumping out the way of traffic.
The whole Capel Street area now would be the Brazilian corner. That's where all the Brazilian people are now. There's thousands. There's about probably, 40, 50,000 Brazilian people in Ireland. They come here. They contribute a great lot to the economy. And they come here to learn English. The students.
Correct. And funny enough, it just shows you that they're coming from that far away to this island that was normally, we only had visitors from America in the summer. And we had plenty of those because they loved this country. And so it was very traffic free. Now we have people coming from all over the world.
Yeah.
Making their way here to this island that normally we had nobody like that.
Yeah.
So it's a very strange affair, to be honest with you. Now, how they're housed, and I think that contributes as well, funny enough, the amount that has arrived to the housing problem, especially the fact that the price of houses is not controlled as it is in the EU, in countries like France, which is a wealthy country. And yet there's none of this business of the price of houses as is here. You can rent there far, far cheaper and be protected. You have rights, which they don't have here as far as you can see. They can be put out and the rents can go so high that they can't afford it, which might be contributing to the homelessness. So, but the fact that we have such an amount of manufacturing kind of thing, and our tax system attracting multinationals was under attack by the EU. There, especially some of the ones on the commission. There was a one called Vestager or something like that. She was a competition, whatever she was, and she was. They seemed to be criticising Ireland because of its tax, forgetting that they were wealthy countries and still wealthy, and we were poverty struck for years. Really up to the 80s, and we had employment, but there wasn't much you could do with the money that you were getting because it wasn't sufficient even to buy a house. You had to be very prudent to try and do that, and fortunately I was able to do it. But what I'm saying is that they should follow the EU as regards to having this houses at an affordable price, so that people didn't have to be looking for vast sums of money and maybe being helped by their parents. People on good salaries have 100,000 a year. What a fantastic salary! Now, if they're married, they'll be paying tax. But funny enough, the fact that they can't afford a house is symptomatic there's something wrong somewhere, because people are not earning that type of money on the continent at all.
Yeah.
The wages are a lot lower than here. So that's something that needs to be addressed. And of course the EU now is enforcing a universal for the EU members of 15% corporation tax. I presume that's the sort of penalise this country, because I think each country should be responsible for what to attract industry. This uniformity, this kind of communist approach never works.
Exactly.
Because that's what it is, a socialist agenda, and it never works. Usually people become poverty stricken. And the green energy, want to watch what they're at as well. Is it going to improve the livelihoods of people, or is it going to interfere? And as far as you can see, it's interfering with livelihoods. I noticed that, for example, just we're talking about the price of and the data that we were talking about earlier. I noticed now even 10 Catholic churches, including the headquarters in Armagh diocese, in Armagh, they've got rid of fossil fuels. And funny enough, it's a word that I didn't grow up with, fossils. I thought that was something that was perhaps a wild animal in the outback, wolves or something, or foxes. Now here we are, and apparently it's to do with anything, including oil. So, what's people going to be using for heating if they're not using oil? So, there's 10 churches, so I don't know what kind of heating they have. I hope they're not freezing in the winter, because what kind of heating are you going to have in a big church if you haven't got something by way of radiators and that can be heated by oil? And so I think livelihoods is going to be interfered with. If they're all going this fossil, getting rid of fossil fuels, it means then that there'll be unemployment in a lot of areas where there's employment now.
I think, look, while the Ukraine war is going on, what they should do is they should put a hold on this idea of not burning turf and not burning this and burning that, because they're cutting the gas, they're cutting everything, so we're going to need something. So the Greens should keep quiet for a while.
See, we didn't hear a word about all this until they put their snout in Dublin in the Parliament, the Dáil, and where there was none now there's 12. But I presume when there's another election they'll be back to the square one, because people are not too pleased with what they're doing. Except a small minority that think that mankind can control the weather. When I look around this country, I cannot for the life of me see anything that requires the kind of what they're doing, the green agenda. Because I from the north of Donegal down to the tip end of Kerry or Cork, I don't see anything by way of smoke coming out of factories or anything. It's the cleanest looking environment I ever saw. So what are they doing? They're concentrating on farm animals. Now, if they're concentrated on the multiples, the supermarkets with their plastic mountain and the amount of plastic, funny enough, they don't seem to mention one word about these.
Yeah.
So there's an agenda, and it's the ordinary public that's going to be suffering. It's the multiples producing all this plastic. Heretofore, when they weren't here, there was no such thing as pollution. But with this plastic, there is pollution, and that's the thing. And farmers that have slurry and spreading it should make sure that it doesn't go into the water system. That is one solution that they need to sort of develop, and to make sure that the rivers and lakes are pollution free, because they're often affected by what's going into the ordinary streams and then into the system, and fish cannot be as plentiful as they were. So these are all the sort of situations that when we're talking about what we started off talking about, that it needs to be addressed, and so that people are not penalised because of their occupation. Farmers work 7 days a week, hail, rain or snow, every day of the year, and deserve some respect for what they contribute.
They do indeed. Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you very much, Oliver.